Alright, time for another quick episode on the No Pond Condom Pond Build series. This is one of your main ingredients right here for waterproofing. This is how I make it. This is basically pozzolan. This is a crude form of it. This is how your grandparents used to make it and stuff like that, and other people in ancient times. Pozzolan is technically volcanic ash. Most pozzolan nowadays is fly ash that's left over from the coal fire plants. And well, basically we're just simulating that. This stuff isn't quite as good because we got a little bit of charcoal and some other stuff mixed in with it. And it's not quite as pure, but it doesn't really have to be. So basically I'm processing this in water as a means of wet processing. This is also somewhat going to slake the material. But part of the reason, the main reason that I'm putting this in water is this is how I wet process stuff, whether it's clay or whatever I'm doing. Sometimes you want to get the organic material out of the mix, because organic material will make holes. Especially if you're going to make pottery, you don't want any organics in your mix at all. Now if you're just making building material, like cob wall or that kind of thing, you want to be a little waterproof, you can skip this step because there's already going to be cob straw and other shit in there anyway, so it doesn't really matter. This is just going to go along with it. Plus that this has charcoal in it, and one of the things I do with my charcoal, a lot of times with this pit ash, I'll shake it out dry, and I'll just make a nice little bucket of good, clean, dry stuff, and then I'll use that in my shed house to cover for turd covers, so for dry composting. Okay, now one of the things that's good about this is because it's got some of that charcoal in here. The charcoal is smell neutralizer. And so that's one of the magic things about charcoal. So if you put this in, use this in your shit house, you have no flies, everything's good and clean, and your turds compost the way you want them to. No flies, no mess. Okay, now back here to the mix. Okay, we want to get some of the floaters out of here, because the floaters are where the organic stuff is. So I got that much floater in there. And I could set this aside. There's some other things I could do with this as a product. But right now I'm just going to get rid of it this time, because for my particular job site that I'm on, I don't need the byproduct that's created from this. I just need it out of this mix because there's too much. I don't need all of it out, but I can't have this much. This is too much. So we'll get the floaters out, and I'll continue filling this baby up. And then when the bucket's basically full of dropped out material, okay, you want to stir it up too as you're putting it in here, because you'll get some organics lodged in the bottom. So when you stir it up, it gets the floaters freed up so they can float. And I'm going to use this in my pond mix, so I don't really want to have any more organics in here than necessary. Okay, now there's another byproduct I'm going to get out of this. Before I'm done with this and before I use it, I'm going to soak the shit out of this stuff. And then I'm going to pour the water off, and I'm going to save the water that comes out of here. And the water that comes out of here I'm going to use for making lye and saltpeter. And saltpeter you can use like, you know, a precursor to black powder. If you've got like an old black powder gun that you might use, you know, in your off-grid living. You can use the water that comes out of this. Like basically what I do typically is I just let it settle out, and then the next day when everything's dropped out and the floaters are at the top, I'll just dump it through a fine screen instead of this coarse screen. I'll get a really fine one and dump this through. And then I reduce the water down, just put on some heat, reduce it down, and then you get down to your lye crystals and stuff. If that's what you happen to need. You know, if you need some Drano or lye for breaking some stuff down, that's one way you can get your lye. But also when you're making this kind of a mix, you want to get the lye out of here too. Because lye breaks things down, we don't really want the lye in here. So we're going to rinse the lye out so we get a better pozzolan. A little bit more, and I'm gonna start filling it up again. But that's basically what you do. Just get it down to about where you can. Depending on what you're gonna make with it determines what level of purity you need. I just need enough to not have holes in my pond box. So that's how I process my fire pit ash. I'm going to continue filling the bucket up, but I'm not going to make you watch. That's just a waste of time. You don't need to see that. So this is how you make element number 3 for your pond mix. Waterproofing. That's your waterproofing. Well, that's one of the additives that makes the waterproofing. See you on the next episode.